Hello, everybody. Hello. Grab a seat. I hope everybody's having a good day.
Hello. Hello.
So, as everybody knows, we have news of the murder of Mrs. Stevenson. The news is we have actually found who the killer is. Yeah. So, to give a short briefing on the subject, Mrs. Albert Stevenson was the victim. She was murdered at around 11:15 p.m. She was alone, and the streets were also empty. We know that she had been using the telephone non-stop until she was killed that night. She claims that she had overheard a conversation between two men. She said that they were going to kill at 11:15 p.m. where a train passes by the house and that there will only be one light open. And with this information, we have narrowed it down to people that was close to her, especially in that neighborhood. And after a few back and forth with calling the police department and the operator, she was sadly killed with no help. Any questions so far?
I have one.
Yes.
Why didn't Mrs. Stevenson realize that she was the one that was getting killed?
Well, she was a querulous neurotic. It might have been hard for her to think properly with all the anxiety that she was inducing that time. Even if she did notice it, early on, she couldn't really leave because she was bedridden. She couldn't really leave by herself. Any more questions? Okay, moving on. I have a few evidences that I wanted to discuss with you all. So the first one is that the number she might have called may have not been the wrong number, but it's the actual number, but got connected to an ongoing call by accident. Well, she knows the address that was mentioned by the killers at the call, and she said that it was near her, but the sad thing is that it was actually her address. The client, and when we say client, the killer who instigated the murder, they know specifics about the location of the victim, and assuming from the pattern of behavior of Mrs. Stevenson and her husband, there is not really much friends that they have, so the range of people who might have instigated the murder was within the neighborhood. The client also knows what's inside the location of the victim, just like the bracelets and rings that was inside the house and that Mrs. Stevenson have. We know that Mrs. Stevenson was sick and got her appendix removed 2 years ago. Another trait of her is that she is a querulous neurotic, making her patience very short and making the said killer, who is close to the victim, possibly annoyed by her personality and behavior, which might have led to the killing. And here's why all of those are connected. Now, as I said before, it is impossible for a client to know that much about the location of the victim. One suspect that we have is the husband. We know that the number she tried to call was her husband's, but she got misdirected to the ongoing call that we have mentioned. Each description of the situation that the killers gave was the exact same as with Mrs. Stevenson, just like the 11 p.m. train that passes by when people are asleep. And it's very impossible for people to not be bothered by it, so it is within the neighborhood. So therefore, the killer is Mr. Stevenson. And here's why. Mr. Stevenson is an employed man and pays the dues of the house. He is tired from work always, and going home is more tiresome because of his husband. Mrs. Stevenson got surgery 2 years before, which is expensive. Not only that, but he needs to keep up with expensive maintenance of pills. Grabbing from the story, Mr. Stevenson is a cold husband who rarely shows affection towards his wife, just like in the telegram that he sent. It's short and it gives a vague and lazy excuse on why he hasn't come home yet, which is another evidence that he is the killer. He avoids coming home early because he knows that his wife will get killed at 11:15 p.m. There are two main reasons why Mr. Stevenson wants to kill Mrs. Stevenson, his wife. The first one is that she became unbearable to him and he is now frequently annoyed by her complaining and jitters. And the second one is that he is having an affair with his secretary, as is mentioned in the story. Come on, who would give that much of a lazy excuse to a wife who is about to get murdered? Someone whose future is very bright ahead of him and it is very laid out with his secretary on the side. He thought that he only had one thing to do, and it is to murder his wife so that he could spare her the suffering that she has to go through alone and being left by her husband, and that he could spare himself the burden of leaving his very much sick wife. So that is all we have for today. Thank you all for coming. Meeting dismissed.